Today I'm going to start laying the dual gauge track here in Sewell. And originally I didn't screw this piece of homo sewed down because my thought was I would just move it out where it's a little easier to work on it since it's all dual gauge and it's two dual gauge turnouts. And I thought I would lay the rail all the way up to this joint here and then install it. But as I start this process, I just started thinking, well, what about the feeder wires? And I didn't want to have to try to solder on the sides of the rails for the feeder wires because I like to solder mine on the bottom of the rail so they're not visible and install them as I'm installing the rail. And now I could, put them on the sides and down here and bury them in dirt and everything, but I use weathered rail and it's really hard to clean the side of weathered rail when if you don't clean it before you spike it down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna lay all the dual gauge track up to, or the rails from here and over here, up to these turnouts pretty close to here. These turnouts are actually a really good spot to work on, and there's good lighting here with the lights above, and it's really good height to work on it. It's just back in there would have been a little more difficult. So I am gonna just lay the rails up to here, and then I will put this in place. And then when I get to the turnouts up to where there's a lot of feeder wires, the piece will be permanently in place. So down here I'm going to drill a hole for all 9 rails here, and then I'll drill through the homo sewed into plywood, and then when I pull this out I will just leave the feeder rail. I'll probably have to stick the feeder wires to the homo sewed and then figure out some clever way to get them down. Maybe I'll block this up on a 2x4 and reach in there and feed all the wires down, and then I'll pull it down somehow. We'll figure it out when I get there. So I'm not going to get fancy here and try to videotape my screen at work. I'm just going to take a video of my screen, but you can see here that this is the turnout. The dark red lines, or the regular red lines, represent the standard gauge rail heads. The green line represents the narrow gauge rail head. Now the light green, kind of yellowy lines on each side of the green is the rail base. And then the magenta lines next to the red are the rail base for the standard gauge rail. And so you can see how one of the frogs looks right here when I see it on the screen. Now it's really easy to see this on the screen because I'm zoomed up pretty close. But when it prints, it'll print quite a bit smaller, but I can still see the lines good enough to know where I'm bending. And again, it's quite a bit different where you bend on the base versus where you bend on the head, or where you center the rail, I should say. You can't center the rail over the head if all you draw is the head, because you don't know if you're centered on there, and you can be off quite a bit. So here's one of the templates printed out for the first turnout. You can see I've soldered on top of it here. This is a piece of homo sewed. And if I kind of get up close, you can see how I printed the base and the head. Unfortunately, when we come back to the frogs, it got pretty much mutilated in there. This one I printed in black and white just to see if it would still work, and I think it still works. You can kind of see the narrow gauge base. It's a little harder to see it, but this worked out much better to build this on this piece of homo sewed. Now these rails are already laid out there, so I only built the inside of the turnout here, and then I went and placed this inside the turnout that was already there. And then what's nice about this was I built this all one piece, and then after I took it off here, I cut my gaps, and this is like how you cut the gaps. Now I'm not powering my standard gauge rail out here, so it's a little easier. Had I been powering this, it would have been even more complicated. But you have gaps here for this frog, and then I counted this frog and this frog as one section, so I just had a gap in this rail here, and then gaps here and here, and then another gap here. It's pretty complicated to get this laid out so that you're not making yourself a shorting machine. The dual gauge yard is all installed here in Sewell. can see the shades just going through this one track here. Now these two turnouts in here took me a really long time. It took me almost an entire week. Just didn't have a good method for getting these things installed. Get this train stopped here. And so it took me a long time. I actually rebuilt this one a couple times here. This one, I got it pretty much on the first try, although I did rebuild this frog twice. And what I'm doing here is the standard gauge is Proto 48. So this is a Proto 48 truck here, and you can see it runs through there great. And then here is a narrow gauge truck, and it also runs through there really nice too. Now this track goes downhill here a little bit, and it's going to go around the Babcock lumber office and the freight house, and I forget what the other structure is down here, but they'll all be right in here, and this will be a small retaining wall here. And then this is the interchange yard here, and you can see I've got a standard gauge hopper sitting down in there. I'm going to pull this off the track because I don't want to hear that all day long. But you can see the standard gauge hopper car that belongs to those trucks there was sitting here just to make sure that the clearances were okay, but I've got to finish assembling this. This is an Intermountain car that I painted for Chesapeake in Ohio and started weathering it. But the tracks end right about here because I ran out of rail, and I just got some yesterday, so I'll continue on. Had to add a little piece on here because I wanted the engine house a little bit farther back this way. It was a little bit unrealistic, the distance I had here, so I scabbed on a little piece here of Homosote just to move that back a couple inches. Started work on this turnout right before I ran out of rail, and some of these ties you can see in here are left long because I didn't exactly know where I wanted the points to be, and once I kind of decided, I'll just go cut off the ones that I don't need here. Same down here, I wasn't exactly sure where the points are going to end up, so I thought, well, I'll just lay them all along. And with this inside rail here too, I wasn't exactly sure where it was going to come, so I'll just nip off whatever I don't need here. And as I come around here, not much has been happening in here except for I did smooth and paint the inside of this here. This is just some spray paint for now. I'll paint all this with latex black paint here. I did get the extension on here. I didn't trim off this piece yet because I'm going to wait to get this on and run my edge router up there. I also painted black inside of there where that lift bridge. I got a nick up here that I got to fix and a couple little things that showed up. This, I've got some post-it notes on here to help protect the backdrop on there from some overspray, but you can see I left the backdrop wrapping around in there. And then I also got the lift bridge painted black here, and then this is a track that's going to go on it, and you can see how I put the rails on the ends of these bridges here. They're actually glued, they're soldered to some brass, and then they're glued to some plywood that will all get glued down in here so that the ends can never move. And I'm using a piece of flex track here, but all this will be painted black. And then I've got one up here too where this comes through that'll match up to the same thing, and then I'll continue spiking this. But I've got all the rails in down here, and now they go all the way up the switchback. One of the things I had a little bit of an issue with that I didn't anticipate was even though I leveled the tops of the spline roadbed, the bottoms weren't exactly level, and a lot of the risers, they weren't holding the Homosote splines very well. These things started to tip a little bit. They actually kind of super elevated, and which would be pretty good on maybe on a modern layout. This one I didn't want super elevated curves, so what I ended up doing was cutting these little blocks, gluing these to this, and then I glued these to this block, and then it had more surface area up here, and then I pulled it until I leveled all the curves out. So now these are all level in here. And you know, a lot of these did hold, but a couple of them every now and then just didn't hold good enough, and you can see some up there that I had to work on. And I think there's one more. No, maybe that was just it. Those three over there, this one here, and then three right in here. But this is all working good. This is all same as it ever was down here. Not much else is going on, just that dual gauge took a long time. Another big thing I did up in here in Clifftop, you can see, is I got the route for the lighting valances in. For curving the valance and the fascia, I'm going to make some plywood supports in the back to maintain the exact curve. And so what I did here is I made a couple, actually 3 templates that I'm going to use to trace on some plywood and then cut out the curved, like the framing pieces that'll go behind. The reason why I'm going to do that is because I'm also going to cut a matching set that's going to go up in the ceiling so that I can install the valance, the lighting valance, to match the fascia, and also, you know, put LED strips on here. I'm going to pre-wire the strips before I put them up, and these will all be connected with some straight sections on the ends here. But the first thing is to get one set of these cut out of 1/2-inch plywood, check its fit, and then make duplicates. When I make the ones for the valances, I'll actually extend the ends a little bit so I can overlap them and hold them up to the ceiling more, because there's less opportunity to screw them to the ceiling than I could to the layout framework. So I'm also going to make the ones in the valances wider. Again, pardon my fingers, I've been staining ties, but I'm going to make these, hey there, I'm going to make the ones for the lights wider, because the lights are higher in Clifftop than anywhere in the layout, and I think I'm going to use double strips, so there'll actually be at least 6 strips of LEDs on here, or maybe I'll do 5. I'll do 2 of the cool white, 2 of the soft or the yellow white or whatever, warm whites, and then just still 1 strip of the blue colors for the nighttime scene. I think that I'm going to need a little more light than I normally have because I'm quite a bit higher. Well, pardon the sound of the heater out here, but it's what I got to deal with for now until I get the permanent one installed. And what I've got here is I've got a piece of 3/4 plywood. I thought I'd have, but it was 3/4. And I've laid my templates face down so that the writing is down facing the wood. And then I just laid a bunch of random junk on here to hold them down. I'm going to take some paint, and this is just some, I don't know, it's like a real paint. And I'm going to mist over here to kind of shadow, you know, so I don't have to trace these out. And then I'm going to cut them out, and then I'm going to use those as the continuing pattern for all the rest of them. Looks like it worked good. I got all that in, and I'll get that all painted white. But I am really strongly considering painting the ceiling out here black, but I'll leave it white above the layout, and the valances will come down and they'll be black. And I'm going to run the valances a little bit taller here than I did over there, because this scene's a little deeper here and it's a little more space between here and here. And so I'm actually running double rows of lights. It'll actually be 4 of the white LEDs, so there'll be 2 soft white, 2 cool white, and then 1 color strip. And I'm actually printing these pieces here that'll get painted white. I did it in blue just because that's the only filament I had. I'll just spray them white. But these are made to match the curves up here. And so you'll see those will get screwed on underneath there, and all this will be painted white. And then you can see kind of the different angle I'm doing here. So there'll be 2 strips on the shorter piece here, and then 2 strips of the white here, and then 1 color up here. So there'll be 3 strips and 2 strips, and then this bottom piece is here just to fit with the back. And these are straight here. Kind of get an idea of the shape of it here if I hold this up. And what's happening is that that length is determined by the cut sections on the LED strips. So as you can see, as I get around here, when I'm putting these together, these will be, so there'll be a strip, 8-inch strips here, 8-inch strips here, and they'll keep going on the curves in 8 inches, and then when I get to the straights, they'll all be one long straight piece. So it'll be a little bit more soldering to do, but that's how I'm going to solve getting the LEDs up in Cliff Top, and I'll probably do that in Landisburg as well. I got these pieces in here because now I'm curving the fascia, which is different. You know, I took out that straight pieces here, and I centered the control panel here, and now we'll have curved fascia, a little bit of straight, and a curved fascia, straight, curved fascia, and then that'll just go straight back that way. And all these curves, I use my laser level to project those up, and those curves all match. So I cut all these pieces and those pieces at the same time, even though those are a little bit wider. The front edge of this one is exactly to the matching the front edge of that one. So I'm going to have to do a little bit different here with the control panel. I'm going to cut these wings off right here, and then the hinges will be down on the bottom of this piece here. That'll still fold down and out of the way, and I did have to move the servos a little bit over. I got some wires here to make the cables that'll go from the servo controllers here back up underneath the tipple and connect up to the wire bundle back here. I did lay the rails across here so I could adjust the height of this. So now this is all in and glued in now. And I still have to do the back one here. You can see I've got some risers, but this will all get put up here, and I'll lay the tracks out on there. All the ties are in. Gonna start laying turnouts as soon as I get the dual gauge all done up to the lift bridge. And my goal is to kind of get along through the top, or through the past the dump trestle here and across the lift bridge, and then we will pick it up right up here where I stopped at this turnout right there. Now I have started working on a turnout constructing video, and the way I do turnouts is kind of an old school all wood tie method. So I don't use templates. So if you're interested in kind of learning how to do it without buying templates and building turnouts to fit the exact location, that's what the video will be on. It'll be a long one. I'm actually going to do it at this turnout here because it's pretty normal looking turnout. And then there's some special turnouts in here. I don't think I'm going to put those in the video because they're kind of complicated, a lot of curves and Y's and stuff. So that's it for where I'm at. The layout updates are going slower because track laying just goes slower, and that's my focus at the moment. Quick update here on shay number 2 also. It's pretty much done. I've got the cylinder set out here because I am putting the rods in it. I painted a new set of rods. Here's the crankshaft for it here. You can actually see with this out, you can see all the bearings. There's 4-ball bearing sets in the crankshaft, one in every journal. As far as the truck goes, I got a new rear truck design. It's operating pretty good. I got new, rebuilt all the both trucks are brand new. They have now brass gears. In here I was trying to do plastic ones, but they just weren't holding as well as the brass ones do. And then I'm also, you can see over here, this is my Bachmann Climax. I am changing the boiler to be a stepped boiler, and I'm also moving, putting a Faulhaber motor up in here rather than using the Bachmann motor. I get too much lurching going down grade with the Bachmann one, so I'm doing an all new drive for this. Another little project I'm working on here is I'm doing a 2-drum hoist. These are all my own files, and you can see that I even got the nameplate up there, and if I could ever get close enough, you could read that all the writing is in there. This is the second test print. It actually has a couple little issues, but I'm printing a whole new set. So hopefully this will be all finished. I have all the pieces for it done. I just am working on trying to get this main print done before I do the little pieces here. So look in the future to see what that's going to turn out like. Next up will be building shay number 5. I'm trying to get the base model done for that, to test the parts, and hopefully I'll get that done in time to bring it to the March modelers retreat for the NMRA in Plymouth, Minnesota. So if you're around in Minnesota and you go to that meet, hopefully I'll be there displaying some of the stuff.